Welcome to the 8th edition of Cannabis Thinking Talks. My name is Alex Lucena, and I'm an associate partner and head of innovation for the Green Hub. So, as usual, we have an international guest, a very special guest with us tonight. But before I introduce her, I'll just quickly go around the room and talk a little bit about our colleagues that are here today. Starting with Marcelo Greco, my buddy here, one of the my professor when it comes to cannabis science. Let me call it that way. This guy teaches me a lot on a daily basis. Again with us tonight, Daniel Jordan from Portal Seixas, also from São Paulo. Daniel, big partner. For those who do not know Portal Seixas, Google it up. This is our main news portal for the cannabis Brazilian industry. Great job helping us develop the market. Daniel, welcome again.
Thank you, Alex.
And Caroline. And Caroline this time is Caroline Hens. She is our very special guest as well, because this is our first time with us in the Cannabis Talks, and we're very proud to have here today with us a leader, a female Brazilian leader that is ahead of I guess it's fair to call it multinational at this point, considering that Caroline, this is our 6th anniversary as the CEO for Hemp Meds. She's located in California, in San Diego. So for us, Caroline, huge pleasure having you with us, and welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to me, seriously. I really want to thank Green Hub for this invitation. It was a surprise to me, and especially for now I can to know Gaynell. This is amazing opportunity, for my HickMed's 6 years anniversary. I have so much things in common with Gaynell, and I hope I can, connect more. And I would love to hear all these amazing stories. Just a little bit talking, I'm just feel like, oh my God, I have so much to learn and listen. Especially, I'm a journalist. Also, I have the same background, like industry, and I came from movie industry also. And then my life changed completely for CBD. So it's an amazing pleasure to, be here and talk to her.
So you guys have a lot in common then, because I'm just about to introduce Gaynell Rogers, also from California, okay? And without further ado, Gaynell, welcome. Pleasure having you with us. And for those in Brazil, you're speaking to Brazil, Latin America. This will have subtitles in English, or rather in Portuguese. So this goes to a global audience, of course, but we're all Brazilians. We all represent the cannabis Brazilian industry. So welcome to Brazil. Welcome to the Cannabis Thinking Talks 8th edition. And tell us a little about yourself, your background. Gaynell Rogers by Gaynell Rogers.
Okay. All right, fine. Well, thank you all. This is really a pleasure. It's nice to be out of the country today in my brain, because our country is in real turmoil during this election cycle. So this is a nice break from that. So I'll talk a little bit about my beginnings. I am a trained film and music media relations person. Was in that field for 25 plus years, worked on at least about 25 feature films and hundreds of documentaries, as well as commercials. So ran a post-production house, but also stepped in and out of many studios. Imagination Inc., which did all the alphabets and number counts for Sesame Street. Lucasfilm, we all know, stepped in and out of there a few times on the digital remastered rollout of the first 3 Star Wars films, which was super fun job, probably the most fun job I ever had. And then from there, worked independently in record production, artist management, media relations for celebrities and artists. Just had a real knack of, and then went into my last corporate job, as I was saying, my last straight job was at Pixar. So that was for head of feature film publicity for the what they call the red carpet award season of a movie called The Incredibles with Brad Bird, and then also the marketing setups for John Lasseter's first Cars movie. So I've had angels on my shoulders. I've been at the right place at the right time with many, celebrities from movies, television, music, and everything from rock and roll to metal to folk and blues and reggae and Cajun music. I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, but I got lucky and married a Californian more than 30 years ago. And so I consider a real blessed life. With all that said, I came to the cannabis industry as a medical cannabis patient. I am a 3-time cancer survivor, and I was super afraid to use medical cannabis for my first cancer because it was just illegal in California, and I was scared that I would have my health insurance dropped. So I didn't use it until my second cancer, which was 2007, in which I was extremely vocal about how life-changing it was. That was a colon cancer, very serious, very big operation, and lots of recovery time. So I was pretty vocal in my little local newspaper about it. And of course, all those, conservative suburban moms, I was in Marin County at the time, which is across San Francisco Bay, was like, "What are you doing? You'll never work anywhere else again." And it's like, too bad. It's a life changer, and you better get a grip. So in 2009, a friend of mine from the music business called me up, and she said, I thought I was retired and was going to write my memoirs and life story and a cookbook and stuff. And my friend called me and said, there's this gentleman in Oakland, and he's looking for somebody that has national and international media skills and marketing skills, and I wonder if you would talk to him. So I was actually recruited to Steve D'Angelo and Harborside in 2009. Which I know is a long time ago. I think it's about 12 years ago. Yeah. And it was just a spiritual, energetic match. He was a big personality. I could tell his intention was very authentic and real. And we were a great partnership for about 10 years. And then I took a break, and now I am back actually on his team as a personal management advisor to books, TV, and television projects. So I'm currently still working with Steve on his personal public management. And it's so much fun. I cannot tell you what an honor and a blessing it is, because he has such integrity and the people around him have shared consciousness. We can manifest and execute really well. And that always, for me, whether it's Lucasfilm, Pixar, specialty food brands I've worked, or big movies that I've worked, it's always that kind of energy and innovation and execution in my world comes from the top down. Yeah. The person that's running the business, running the company, running the film, running the music recording, the way people are treated and the way people are executed comes from the top. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, for sure. I love the word manifesto. I'm sure you'll get back to that word at some point during our talks. I love the word manifesto. There's a book about that you'll certainly mention later on during the talks. But we'll circle around the questions, and let's promote a big chat here. So let's, ladies first, of course, start with Caroline. Caroline,
I'm trying to put myself together after all this introduction, because I just had like goosebumps all over my body and my hair, and I'm trying to don't cry seriously, because it's so much things in common, and especially, in even like movie industry, of course we have different, times of frames and different, situations. And I have a similar experience with cannabis. Was also like pre-cancer in my colon. That's why I got in the CBD industry also. So that once you told me that, I was like, oh my God, this is I need to start breathing. So I just, would love to know how this idea of the Treehouse Global started, because we understand that cannabis industry, it's mainly, changing, but mainly dominated by, testosterone area. I go to Brazil, I'm the only woman in, stages and, events, and it's kind of changing, but I would love to know how the idea of the Treehouse started.
So thank you for asking that. It's Treehouse Global Ventures, and I co-founded it with my two partners, Lori Ferrara in Chicago and Lindy Snyder in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So during that first 10 years with Steve, I helped launch the ArcView Group, which was the angel investment network, as well as many other businesses that he initiated during that time. And so I witnessed, and I was with them for 8 years, and I witnessed how male dominated financial culture is. And it is not a United States conversation, it is a worldwide conversation. And so when Lindy and Lori and I were doing investments together, and we were helping all these women that were coming newly into the space from banking, from retail, from pharma, from beauty, that were risking their career visibility to enter the cannabis space. And what we noticed in the ArcView group is that the male culture was deepening, and all of these people were forming funds, and frankly, and we were known lifetime investors, and we were not invited, frankly. And about 3 years ago, I turned to Lori and Lindy and said, well, this is ridiculous. All these people are raising all this money, and they're not raising money for women, for people of color, for gender equity, etc. And so I had a little retreat in Maine at Lindy's property up there, and we had a long 3-day chat and said, let's do this. Let's form Treehouse Global Ventures. Let's have our mission to support women, people of color, and minorities of all kinds, gender minorities as well, with not only money and funding, but mentorship and guidance. And so we formed Treehouse. It was called Treehouse because we all, as we grew up, had tree houses on our family properties. And Lindy had actually several on her property in Maine. And we just thought it was uplifting and fun. And it said Treehouse Global because everybody worldwide knows what a treehouse is. And so we just thought we wanted to inspire. And it's really taken off. We made our first investment a while ago to Sava Deliveries here in Northern California, run by a fabulous team of young women that came in from other companies. And we're looking at a beauty product right now, a hemp product right now, a manufacturing product right now. But we do, we have a certain criteria that we look at, and we are we treat our investors' money like our money. So our due diligence is very robust. It's not just the idea, it's about the team, of course.
That's great. That was going to be my next question, how the criteria that you're looking for, what type of business in United States first, how United States cannabis industry is changing really fast, right? So in your point of view, what is going to be more, interest for your investors, and what you believe for the Treehouse Global Venture is going to, focus on as far as companies' investments?
Yeah, in other words, if you could tell us the thesis, the so-called thesis, what's your thesis for investment?
The thesis for investment is good intellectual property ownership, an executive team that has execution experience in another industry proven, and a vision for long-term strategy and the way to implement it. So we're looking at several different spaces. So with that said, I also want to add that we're not just looking at companies that are led by women and minorities and people of color and gender equality, but we are looking at companies that are founded and led by men, but they have a good representation of women and people of color in their executive suite and in the boardroom.
Okay.
So that I want to make that clear that it's not just women and minorities. If actually we have a gentleman right now that has a prototype of a machine for the hemp industry that looks very fascinating, but it was women who built it, but he's the one who founded it. So, it's that kind of a thing. But in regards to due diligence, we have over 92 bullet points of due diligence when we're starting to look at a company.
Okay, cool. No, perfect. Anybody would like to add a comment, or should I move around to Marcelo? Daniel, please be free. Otherwise.
Yeah, I will. On my turn, I will ask.
Okay. So, Marcelo, take it from there, please.
Am I off mute? Yes.
Yep.
Gaynell. I hope I pronounced it correctly.
Perfectly.
Did I say it correctly as well, please?
Yes, you did. You did.
Okay.
So yeah, my question is a kind of a 2-in-1 question. I think it's a fun question. You told us how you met Steve. It was going to be it was going to be a 3-in-1, but you told us how you started and how you met him. I wonder if you can tell us some curiosities about working with him, how it is to work with Steve. And the second one is, what are your future goals and projects in this sector? So it's a 2-in-1 easy question.
Sure. So any thought leader that I've worked with in my career has common characteristics to Steve D'Angelo. And one of those common characteristics, and I'm talking about people like George Lucas and Don Lasseter and Brad Bird. I mean, people who have, creative oil in their DNA. They're so proficient and they love to prepare and think things through in a very thoughtful way, sometimes in a spiritual energy way. But particularly someone like Steve, who's been a social justice advocate for many issues along the way, and so have I. I've been on many nonprofit boards and worked on everything from missing children to kidnapping to human trafficking to music and literacy on nonprofit boards. So recognizing that is his shared consciousness, there is always comes with that package a very quirky side. And so that quirky side could be what time of day he may be more articulate and have more energy than others. To me, it's like artist management. If you're not doing if you didn't sleep well, you're not talking to the New York Times this morning. If you had a fight with your girlfriend or your wife or whatever, that's not a good time to start a Fortune magazine interview. So you have to kind of manage, if you will, the temperament of the thought leader. So I treat Steve like an artist because I think that's what he is. He's a thought leader, he's an artist, he's an advocate, he's an educator. So, we would go and we'd prep for, a good story is the Fortune magazine. We did 2 cover stories with Fortune magazine. And they sent these heavyweight photographers from New York and wardrobe and makeup and the whole deal and did a beautiful shoot. But he was picking out things were like, that's not Fortune magazine. That's a yippee tie from 1976, So change that. And those shoes are not working. And so you actually get in with the stylist and you dig deeper, right? That's part of the fun. Not that hat. Bad shadow on the left side is the right side. That's your good side. So when you are a media expert and you've worked in marketing and promotions as long as I have, you get an innate sense of what works for the New York Times doesn't work for Fortune. What works for Fortune doesn't work for Marijuana Business Daily. what works for Marijuana Business Daily doesn't particularly work for cannabis now. And so you massage the messages and the styling to the editorial content that you're speaking to, because they appreciate that you've done their homework. Who are your readers? Who's reading this? It's like the Green Hub. Who are the people that are listening to this? What's meaningful to them? What matters to them in the medical cannabis world? What's going to make a difference? So we've had a lot of funny moments where you build trust over time with your artist or your thought leader. And if you tell them that he just picked out the crappiest tie he could today, that he trusts you. And that's the first line of my management agreement, by the way. You have to listen to me. If you don't listen to me, it's not going to work. I'm not always right, but you have to listen to me.
I love it.
Everybody knows Steve's hats. Did you bring that up, or was something that
No, he had that style before I got there, and he always wore hats. And I have to tell you this funny story. I mean, one of the first meetings with him, I thought, I don't know how I'm going to get this man on national and international TV looking like that. But he still wore those beautiful suits, and he always dressed very professionally, even on site at Harborside. Even when he walked in the door, he always had a tie or a vest on. He always looked very professional. And that was one of my criterias. You always have a blazer and a proper, if a breaking story happens and all these cameras rush into Harborside, which they did often, we always had a prep wardrobe in his office. So if he was on an off day and had a t-shirt on, which was very rare, we'd always have that prepared in his office. But I think he has his own style. But I have to admit, it's a funny story. I hope he doesn't mind me telling him this. But the second or third visit, I went, I just don't know if the silver pigtails are going to work for media. We're trying to change conversation, language, image, all these stigmas about cannabis. Would you consider a restyle and cut off your braids, something along the lines of a Richard Branson? And he looked straight at me and smiled and he said, no, and never asked me that question again.
It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. And I was proven way wrong then, because he was so articulate and we did have our messaging so concise, especially as we were fighting the federal government those years that they came down on Harborside really hard. And, we'd go to federal court and he'd be on the IRS stand with this very conservative Washington, D.C. judge. And I was so nervous, sweating bullets. And I had New York Times and big reporters in the rooms with me and that were allowed in. And he did 6 hours on the IRS stand in a federal courtroom. And when he got off the stand, he looked at me and we walked out the door and I go, how did that feel? And he looked at me and he goes, that's the best time I think I've ever had educating a federal judge.
Oh my God, that's incredible.
I know. It is.
Cool.
So I hope I answered the question. That's kind of a ramble, but you take each situation for what it is and you try to really value who you're talking to. And here's something I did learn in the big movie studios, particularly at Lucasfilm. You treat everybody the same. The third grader that calls and wants one question to Mr. Lucas, or the New York Times. You treat everybody the same. You answer every call. You don't be snobby. You be real. You be authentic. And that's something that Steve had at Harborside when it was already 2 years old when I came. I was already 3 years old when I came. So in 2009. So that's also something that just the mutual respect of people and making sure that you've done your homework and you've prepared for that interview and that you stay on point and on message. It's very much like a politician, frankly.
Very much like like a politician. You mentioned the word stigma, and this is something that is very closely related to the cannabis in general. And when we spoke to Steve has, correct me if I'm wrong, a global mission going on in his mind. I mean, to connect the tribes, as he mentioned. When he talked to us, he said, "Oh, it's going to be good to talk to the Brazilian tribe." Am I correct in this? I mean, is he trying to really be the word that's going to be taking away the stigma on a global level? Do you think it goes that far away?
Good question, but in a sense, we've already started that effort. But now we are pregnant with projects to to implement that mission, and I'll tell you a little bit about that.
Right.
But let me tell you about what we first did about the stigma of language. Steve has a saying that's very true. Language defines thought. So the words that you use and the tone of voice that you use are very important at the same time. In media studies, body language is 70% of what people vibe out on, and it's 30% of what you say. It's really about body language and your tone of voice and the confidence in your tone of voice. So when we first started, we did a few media training sessions, which I told you about, and was very effective. But he was a natural, obviously, and an articulate, very, very naturally smart as well. So, for example, we had a story coming out, one of the first cover stories, both in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, that were done on cannabis. I think the headline we fed, "Don't call it pot in this business, it's a profession." That was the headline of the first cover story of the New York Times. We fed it to them. We fed that line because we knew it would catch people's eye, but we wanted to get that professional side in. Well, the Wall Street Journal said, "I don't understand." And you get these reporters that's like, that Mary Jane, weed, pot, and they use all those are all the stigma words. How did we transition people saying marijuana, which was a Mexican term, into cannabis? We wrote a glossary for reporters. We wrote a word and language glossary that was very simple. This is why it's not called marijuana anymore, because that has the stigma of weed, pot, and Mary Jane. We call it cannabis because here's the Latin name, and we spelled it out for them. So literally, for the health and science writers that were covering us at the time, we wrote a glossary and said, "I think this will help. What's a caregiver in California? What's the difference between medical cannabis and regular street cannabis? What does it mean? What does Prop 215 mean in California? How did that happen?" So we wrote just a very short glossary, and every time I had a new reporter that was a national reporter that frankly was a little cocky, because they always think they know better, and they're in a hurry, and you want to make your journalists, you make their job easier. You offer them, I want to show you a glossary we wrote for the Wall Street Journal's Health and Science Department. Would you like to see it? Oh yes, that would be very helpful. So I mean, I was the police for the first 4 years at Harborside. Not only was I generating media, but I was also calling TV producers, managing editors, editorial boards to all these outlets. Even like NHK Japan and El Globo in Brazil and Le Monde in France and Der Spiegel in Germany, and teaching them why we were breaking these stigmas. And it took some doing, and it took some policing, and it took a little bit of diplomacy and a lot of timing.
So basically, you wrote the cannabis dictionary and you gave it to them. Study it.
But not that, I mean, it was one sheet and maybe 10 items. And it really helped a lot of people. And once we started on a roll and the major media started to use cannabis instead of marijuana in their interviews, which took a good 3 to 5 years, then it was there. Then the language was there. We actually pivoted the language.
It's funny you say that because in Brazil, we already, had the same situation. But I think it's not just the reporter side, but who is giving the interview also. Many times the reporter was going to ask me questions about marijuana, in Portuguese, maconha. How do you feel about the maconha? And then I always respond, medical cannabis. Maconha, medical cannabis. Maconha, medical cannabis.
Again and again.
Yeah.
Daniel, you as a news guy, you of course that this conversation makes a lot of sense, the way you write your articles and all. And please step in the conversation. Floor is yours, man.
Gaynell, thank you for participating with us today. And we're going back to investment. Could you tell us what is the Treehouse Global Ventures investment strategy in relation to the countries in which the companies operate? And bringing to this question to our region, have you made or are you considering investments in Latin America or Brazil?
So I'll answer the second question first. Yes, the reason why we called it Treehouse Global Ventures is that we are all well-traveled. My husband is a recording artist and a producer, a Grammy nominee. We've done, we'd go to Europe for 2 months and do 7 countries. We've been to Brazil many times, Australia, New Zealand, Spain. So we decided, our co-founders and myself decided to make it global, and we would enjoy learning more about companies in Brazil and other countries as well, because we think, and we know this, that it's a global conversation. That's for sure. And it's early. We know it's early in countries like Brazil. So for us as seasoned investors, we have over 30 years experience between us of investing, not just in the cannabis industry, but for our own personal portfolios, that this is a very important part of growing up the industry. And we want to help there. And that's part of our mission. That's why we call it Global Ventures. In regards to our investment strategy, it's pretty much the same as our personal investment strategy. There has to be positive revenue. We do not fund startups. It has to be a company that has a history, probably 2 years or more, with a positive revenue. It doesn't have to be gazillions of dollars, but it has to show that it is a slow and steady build. Okay. We look under the hood of the executive team to see how they've managed their personal finances. We do a background credit check to make sure that they're in their own personal lives, that they know how to manage money. A lot of these younger thought leaders and founders do not have a lot of credit history, but they do have some history through how they manage their college loans or whatever. But it's important that they have what we call financial seasoning and savvy, so that they know what they're doing. We also look at intellectual property. Have they written something that is just proprietary to their business? Because intellectual property is super important in this field. There's not a lot of tech engineers. There's some, not many, worth their salt, frankly, that can develop really important platforms. And I'm not talking about accounting software or inventory software. I'm talking about innovative agricultural things that will change how cultivation is done in a more eco-sustainable way for the environment. Those kinds of things really interest us. We're also really interested, because we have a lot of medical professionals in our families, we're very interested in science and genetics. We think that the science and genetics field, we know that Israel's way ahead of us. Dr. Didi Mayeri, we know he's the kingpin of clinical research in this field. So there's a big, wide open scope for laboratories and scientists and biochemists in other countries that won't be as regulated as they would be in our country. So we're very interested in that. And that's just some of the things that we're looking at. But when we vet, we look under the hood pretty hard, not just in personal wealth, personal experience, personal credit, but also integrity, execution, relationships, the networking of your community. What do people think about the company and how you've built your reputation in the industry in multiple states? So there's a lot. It's more than a marriage. It's really like adopting a child, and also a child that you want to help grow up and be very successful. And I'll add one more thing. There had been a trend, 3 to 5 years ago, because of all the Canadian acquisitions in this country, of going public. Now there's a trend of staying private, because most of those companies that went public suffered in the big time in 18 and 19. They did not know how to evaluate their stock. They didn't know how to engage in rising the stock price. The regulatory frameworks of each state changed every time a state legislature went into session, which disrupted supply chains, distribution, wholesale prices, etc. So there is a trend to invest in companies that still have their original founders and are still privately owned. So that's just a little umbrella of some of the things that we look at.
That's very good. Do you think that's going to be a trend in investment in the U.S. mainly because I think there was a lot of startups in the past, and they didn't take advantage of what happened. They spent money, they didn't administer well. So do you think that's why the investments are going to those type of more mature companies nowadays? And
I know it for a fact.
Trend? Yeah.
A fact, because I know a lot of the fund managers, successful fund managers that have been around longer than Treehouse has, and they've shifted their lens this way because frankly, we all lost a bucket load of money in the public stock market.
Yeah.
All of us initial early investors, we lost big time. And there was a lot of mismanagement of funds, and people were going, I just raised $50 million. It's like, where is it? How did it apply to your company? What was the execution? And most times there was just too much growth expectation and not a slow and steady ladder. A slow and steady ladder of
Consistence, right?
Foundation.
Solid.
Right?
Yeah,
Those-
No other business is expected to grow 35% your second year of business. Look at the other industries that may have kinship to your company. Make your evaluations realistic and make your scalability realistic. And from about 2012 to 2016, it was like, what are you thinking that your company is worth $20 million? What do you base it on? It was smoke and mirrors. I'm telling you, it was a lot of smoke and mirrors.
Doesn't that remind you a little bit about the internet? I mean, the bubble
Yes.
of the internet.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot about it.
It's very similar.
Mm.
Very similar. There's a book called Alpha Girls that's very good. You all should read it, from the Silicon Valley. And it is the first 4 women that became venture capitalists. And they started in the Silicon Valley all as assistants, all as secretaries, and they all ended up being top of their field venture capitalists. And their stories are fascinating. And it was all these bubbles and all the rock and roll they had to go through in the tech industry, which was also very male dominated, frankly.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's so incredible. I'm just having goosebumps again.
It's really, really clarifying. Yeah.
No, it really tells us a lot that Marcelo, right? I mean, we have very close mindsets to everything. Your thesis is the main difference is that Brazil, because of the very early stage, we're basically talking about angel investment kind of money.
Right.
The way you mentioned it, it's more like seed, Series A kind of business.
We like to invest before the Series A, but after the seed.
Mhm.
So when the company has been already founded and seeded, but they need that little boost right in between the next step to Series A, because then we get in at a lower valuation and it's worth more to our investors, right?
Makes total
Yeah.
sense. Yes.
So it's a little bit of a risk taker.
Yeah.
Because it's not like a company that has 5 years and $10 million worth of solid revenue. But some of the funds, they're not looking at companies without more than $5 million of not only solid revenue, but also a cash runway of 18 months. And I'll tell you why. And because when COVID came about, we need to address this because it's going to be here for a while.
Yeah.
There were very few cannabis companies that had a cash runway for a year, maybe 6 months, but not a year or more. So there was a lot of emergency funding going out, and a lot of mentoring on the companies that we have invested in, but also on advisory boards going, okay, you better get ready. This is going to be with us for a while. What would the Silicon Valley do, or what would a grocery store do, or what would a farm do if 30% of their revenue went out the window? And now all of a sudden, in some cases, 50% of your revenue is going to go out the window. How are you going to manage that? So I have to say, there's some silver linings about the COVID pandemic, that we've learned some really good lessons in regards to financial accountability and how you look through the lens of the long term. So you're right about that mismanagement of money. That people were just pouring money into their companies in all the wrong ways, and they couldn't figure out why they didn't have brand loyalty or customer retention or whatever it was that was going to make a difference in the I want to grow 4% this quarter. Well, my investors want me to grow 12% this quarter. It's like, that's not going to happen. Yeah. Be honest. Just tell them it's not going to happen. And this is why. No other company grows 10 to 12% in any industry a quarter. Take baby steps like retail does. Build your brand loyalty. Build your customer retention. Build your intellectual property, and take it slow. Don't be in such a hurry. This is still early. Everyone knows this. This is still early.
Since you mentioned that, and before I hand it to Caroline, sorry, if you could talk just a little bit more about the COVID crisis and how. Was that more or less what you were thinking about?
No, yeah, because I have two questions, but one of the questions I was going to ask.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I'm here, in the United States, and we're seeing what's happening with all this boom, cannabis, and, funds and big corporation. And then now a lot of companies that was raising a lot of money are shutting down and breaking down. And then the feeling I'm having right now is just going to have a few of us. So how do you feel that's going to happen after this COVID wave in the cannabis industry in the United States?
Well, I'll give you an example, because my passion is cooking, and I've done cooking classes in Italy, France, Spain, Ireland, and China. I actually have a natural foods certificate. So this is my Zen. So in between movies and music, etc., I did launch a few food brands, specialty food brands, that were very high-end, what we call in California, artisan food brands. And I'm going to liken this to the specialty food industry. At a point, everybody had their own manufacturing, supply chain, distribution, and wholesale, because that's what they did, because there were so many few stores that carried these very pricey brands at the time. What's happening in the cannabis industry is people are understanding that they cannot keep their cost of goods low and do it by themselves. So they're entering into all these co-manufacturing situations, co-distribution, co-wholesale, co-sales reps, because in numbers they can make a difference. So I'm seeing a lot of really, during this COVID pandemic, much more collaboration, much more cooperation with each other to help people survive this pandemic. This is not going away. We've got flu season coming here. We've got winter. We're probably going to be partially shut down and careful until next spring at least. In the music business, they're telling me till the fall of 2021, period. No festivals, no tours. Very few people are going to jump out on the road to music venues. So we have to take a measurement of specialty foods. And what they did is one of my clients and my good friend Annie Holman of the Galley in Santa Rosa, she secured an FDA approved seafood distribution company, and in the last year and a half has outfitted it medical grade, HIPAA compliant, into a co-manufacturing. Once people heard what she was doing, this is kind of what we call the Trader Joe's model, where you go in, you co-manufacture with comparative supply chains, good storage, and an arm of distribution. So once she got out there, she had 160 brands from all over the country, brands that were not in the state, brands that were in the state, brands that were coming into the market, you know, to come into a co-manufacturing situation. A commercial kitchen here in America, a real good commercial kitchen that will be FDA approved and HIPAA compliant, that's $500,000 right there. And you have to be stainless steel, drain, you have to be handicap compliant. There's all these kinds of criteria. And California is robust in these kind of regulations. So we're very proud of this facility. It was not easy to build it out, but I think that the collaboration and the cooperation of helping each other instead of competing with each other. Oh, you've got a chocolate, I've got a beverage. You know about this facility? Let's source our oil together for these two products and this kind of quota for our 10 milligram criteria for the state. I mean, so if you wholesale a supply chain, your cost of goods go down, then you got a competitive marketplace in the retail environment. And for us now, curbside and delivery is so robust, that's not going away. E-commerce is not going away. So these are the kinds of things that we're looking at that are going to be with us for a while. I actually think what the consumer trends will show after this COVID pandemic is over, I think history will show that people like to be home with their families and people love to shop online. And they love to have cannabis delivered to their door. And they love to have the same driver show up, you know?
And
so
cook.
I think, and cook. And so
One
cannabis
brings to
as
the
an
other.
essential, you know, yeah, cannabis as a essential business,
Right.
like pharmacies. This was a big statement
Yeah.
for the pandemic. And everyone is, you know, it changed the purview of a lot of different cultural stigmas of cannabis.
Right.
It's like, wait a minute, cannabis is medicine. Oh, now I get it. So many new adopters have come into the space. Those first month and a half, March and April, everybody's numbers were just soared. And then they kind of leveled off. And then now they're kind of getting robust again because here in California, because of the fires, we have lost so many farms.
Yeah.
It's very, very sad. So our supply chain here in California is going to be very diminished, very diminished.
Thank you so much. Oh my God. Sorry, I like to talk, guys. So I'm going to step in again. I was going to ask her a question, but I think she kind of already answered and then pops me a different question about it. My previous question was going to be, what are your, suggestions and visions for Brazil market? And I gave yesterday an interview for Forbes saying exactly this. I see the cannabis market, needs collaboration. Brazil market was, is really, new baby, immature. And then I felt that people was exactly doing this. Oh, you have a chocolate. I want to do the same product and I'm going to compete with you exactly the same. Instead, collaboration. So I'm the grower. Why should I need to build the same, market and product that this company is building if we can collaborate, right? And I think this is going to be worldwide, cannabis. I think the future is collaboration. But I think my key question would be the discussion about pharma or supplement, or how do you see the best scenario? Do you think the cannabis needs to go pharma, GMP, grade, or you can go like more, supplements? What do you think about that?
A really good question.
Great
I'm going to
question.
start with the future, what I feel and read about Brazil. And one of my interests, because Steve and I are working on several hemp products and projects.
And by the way, I need to say that apparently Steve's has a big fan followers here in our country, right?
We do. We have a lot of followers in Brazil, and so that's why we. Thanks for bringing that up. That's why we are translating the Cannabis Manifesto into Portuguese, and that will be released by a Brazilian publisher next year.
Nice.
So there,
Just say when.
Yeah, get ready. That will be fun. Hopefully, we'll be able to come to the country by that time and do a book promotion physically. But I think one of the things that Brazil has going for it is because they already produce something like 25% of the world's food production, and the agricultural knowledge and community is so robust in Brazil, and they have the environment for it. I think that there's going to be all kinds of strain genetics, all kinds of science that come out of that, and on both sides of the cannabis and the hemp world. I think that is going to be super robust for the rest of the planet, because you have the environment and the agricultural culture to pull it off. Does that make sense?
A lot.
Yeah,
Totally.
good. And then in regards to the pharma, and we for years we've heard, here comes Philip Morris, here comes, I did a luncheon talk for the British American Tobacco Company almost 8 years ago to their 15 vice presidents that were doing an immersion week in Los Angeles. This was 8 years ago. Did they ever do anything with their immersion cannabis week? No. Are they in their little labs with their mice testing over in the UK? You betcha. Just like GW Pharma, who was working on Epidiolex for many years before they announced it. Yes, there are people that are going to come down the pipes and come up with either synthetic or molecular strains that do certain things to certain conditions. That's definitely going to happen. Are they going to overtake the industry? I don't think so, because I think we have as smart of people and smarter people because they've been in the cannabis culture for a longer period of time. I mean, look at what Steve's global community, one tribe that he's building all over the country. He spent 200 days on the road last year in 9 countries building a network of global conversations that now we are putting in the bricks and mortar into place to continue those conversations and foster these cultures that could benefit so greatly economically, but also community-wise. It's going to take some time, but he's got a mission from God, and it's pedal to the metal for sure.
Very good. Look, guys, I'm the gatekeeper here for time. I hate when it comes to I get a call here from Damari saying that we have about 10 minutes. So what I'd like to do now, starting maybe with Daniel, is just loop around and whatever comes to mind, for final remarks, and we'll close it up at the end with Gaynell. And since now, thanking for this great quality time and great information that you have provided us. I'm sure the whole group here is appreciating this moment right now. Daniel.
Gaynell, thank you very much for sharing with us a bit of your experience, your knowledge, and regarding the Cannabis Manifesto that you mentioned. Please let us know, send us news about it. We will publish it on Sechat. And I hope to see you soon here in Brazil. Thank you very much.
Oh yeah, we'll loop everybody in, Daniel. When it comes time, when she says, "Oh, it's time for us to come down and launch the book," we'll loop everybody that needs to be looped here in the country for sure.
Yes, and send us news to publish on Sechat.
Oh yeah, I mean, straight line here between
Yeah.
you publishing guys.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gaynell.
Marcello, I don't know if you know this, Gaynell, but Brazil is the largest populations of Italians outside Italy. I think with you know with the U.S. as well, but there's a large community, and
I did not know that.
yeah,
Yes,
and
we're a
from
large
São
community
Paulo,
here. And
his accent is very similar to how the Italians speak.
I see. I see.
well, Gaynell, really, really, really big honor. It was one of the best chats I had. Really nice information you brought. This leaves a taste of a little bit more. So let's see if we can do a second round again soon. And thank you very much for being with us.
Caroline, you guys are neighbors in California.
So
Do something about that. And we didn't know that you had so many, I swear to God, we didn't know that you guys had so much in common.
I know, not either I. Then what she was saying, it was like, oh my God, this is, and when you say about word manifesting, it's something that I always bring to my life. And I'm always with, angels, and my life all the time is like proving that angels are there and manifesting. And it was so incredible having this conversation right now. So I just want, really thank you, Green Hub, to having this opportunity. And for sure, I'm going to read more about, you, Gaynell, because it was such an amazing, moment. And I'm sending you a resume. I want to work with you. Okay. Do you have any
Great. Great. Well, let me say this, to close, Alex, thank you all very much. My honor, and so happy to do this. And it helps me also clarify in my own mind what's next. Treehouse Global Ventures, we're always looking for new investors. We're always looking for new companies outside of this country. If there's something that you all feel might be appropriate for us, send it right to me. I'll take a look at it. I'm very interested in mentoring and being on boards in Brazil and South and Latin America. So I have a lot of interest in that. And I also think that I want to make it clear, Treehouse built itself because we want to, yes, fund young companies that we feel are sturdy. But part of that is you get us. We're not going to just throw money at you and go, what did you do this week? I mean, we're going to get on the phone with you and dig deeper and help you do what you need to do to grow. And so I want to make sure that you all know that. And we're always looking for new investors as well, because once you start raising money, you never stop. That's just the way it is. Because we're building an industry this way.
Yeah.
We don't have banking, so we have to keep looking.
It's so good to hear. So you have 3 companies right here in front of you, and many others that we will bring along for sure. The Brazilians are very not just creative, because creativity is so
we're hustlers, right? Go getters.
Exactly that. I mean, we're so used to doing a lot with so little.
Right. And, but that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing, because then you can be innovative in how you execute.
Yeah.
You learn how to do things with very little. And what I tell people when I do marketing and media training is look at a similar company to you outside of the industry and look at their marketing and media strategy. Watch what they do. Watch what they spend and where they spend it. It's really interesting. I've had a lot of companies I've worked with not have a $250,000 marketing budget, but a $10,000 marketing budget, and have it just as effective as a 6-figure budget. You can do it. You just have to apply the same principle.
And
I
the
100% agree. 100% agree.
team, right? It's all about people at the end of the day, right? It's all about people. Listen, with this, needless to say anything else, at least from my end, and I'll have to unfortunately consider this the 8th edition with Gaynell Rogers. Thanks a lot, Caroline. Daniel, Marcelo, and we'll talk again real soon, okay?
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
guys.
It's a
All right.
pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.